Today we have Stewart Fillmore. Stewart is retired FBI. Actually, we met him on one of our other podcasts that we were recording, the Alcatraz podcast that he's actually has an affiliation with Ken and Mike and has spent some time working with them. And we saw that he posted a TikTok related to the Noah case, and it kind of caught our interest, and we didn't realize that he knew the same people we knew. And so we were on the podcast with him. So we wanted him to come on the Noah podcast to really kind of hear his law enforcement take on this, to talk about the crime scene, talk about the medical examiner's report, and talk about, what if, in fact, if the FBI would be working on a case like this, what would they be focusing on? What is law enforcement focusing on? All those kind of relevant questions to this murder mystery that we still don't have hardly any answers on. We just have a lot of questions. So Stewart, thanks for being on the podcast. So let's talk about a little bit your first impression when you first learned about this case and the mysterious death of Noah Presgrove.
Well, on our TikTok channel, Texas Crime Travelers, we look for interesting cases to comment on, and maybe try to give an experienced law enforcement perspective of some things that maybe are sometimes in the news there's some interesting twist to it, and this case is it's a horrific death of a young man, and it's so when it was in the news, it was unsolved, and so that's the kind of things that we look for, and so when I initially read about the case, it was I did not read the actual autopsy report. I think I read some comments about it, or I'm not sure it was actually public at the time, but it was he had received some horrific injuries that he'd been at this party in Oklahoma, and I think a two or three day bacchanal of teenage drunkenness and stupidity that ended in this unfortunate death of this young man, Noah. And when just hearing the circumstances of the party, that the injuries that he received, I think maybe there had been a couple of little slight altercations with a couple of the male party goers there, and that I just was speculating that it sounded like that maybe the crowd had turned on him, and maybe this was a mob beating. But I've read since then I've read the autopsy report, and I'm going to kind of withdraw that thought that this is just a whole bunch of people beat him up, because some of the injuries that he received are, I think, well beyond what just some other teenagers could do. So it's I think there's some very suspicious things surrounding this, but I don't think this was a mob beating.
Yeah.
What do you think it was? Just by reading the report, just
by reading the report. He sustained some massive injuries to the head. The skull was split in two. It was fractured just all over the skull. Massive internal bleeding. For instance, like both of his shoulder blades were fractured. And the thing that jumped out at me was that his one of the chambers of his heart was lacerated, was cut, and so that there would have been massive. That in itself would have caused death pretty quickly. And I just don't see, in a situation where you have a bunch of drunken idiots beating on somebody, that no doubt that could cause some very serious injuries, but I don't see that causing a laceration to the heart at all. So what I think, I saw a comment by one forensic pathologist, that was just commenting on it, that's not involved in the case, who said that Noah was most likely hit by something fast and heavy. And I agree with that. I do think that there was some type of a vehicle injury that caused this. But I'm, where his body was found, I still find very, very suspicious.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that there was no real blood at the scene, if he had been hit on the side of the road, that just didn't make sense to us, that he would be hit on the side of the road and there wouldn't have been evidence of that.
Yeah.
There was No debris. There's no blood. There's nothing. So was he moved there or dumped there?
I think so. I really do. Now, I think where he was found, there was only a slight little stain of blood that was there. There was not a massive amount of blood. But that said, in reading the autopsy report, he had almost a third of his blood volume that was either in the lungs and inside the torso from the massive internal bleeding. That in and of itself could have would have caused the death. Certainly would have been unconscious from that. And so I have, in 29 years in the FBI, I only worked a couple of cases that involved murders or death. And in those cases, it was pretty obvious what the cause of death was. It's only since I've retired as a private investigator that I've worked a number of murder cases and really gotten into this stuff. But I did have a shooting case where the victim died very, very quickly. But there was almost no blood at the scene. He bled internally, massive amount internally, but virtually no blood at the scene. And what happened was the bullet just happened to graze, a major artery, and he bled out very quickly. But the bullet didn't exit. It was a small entry wound, and so there was almost no blood. So sometimes, when we think, well, someone gets a massive injury like this, there's going to be just a lot of blood, but that's not necessarily true if the internal injuries are so severe that, the person dies pretty quickly just from bleeding to death inside, and then that heart stops pumping. So, at that point, depending on how the body ends up, that blood may not have anywhere to go. It just pools inside the body.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that makes me think that it wouldn't be like that is that the fact that he had a head wound, and head wounds bleed. I mean, you have a little exactly. Tiny head wounds. It's gonna bleed. And he had like a 4x2 head wound.
He had a massive, I think a 4-inch
divot
hole in his head.
And that's the only thing that leads a lot of people to believe that it didn't happen there.
Yeah, agreed. And I fully accept what you're saying on that. There's no question there would have been more blood than what you see in that that's on the side of the road there, in that little stain there, without a doubt. If you want me to get to the meat of what I think might have happened,
sure. That's why you're here.
So we know that around 3 a.m. He's involved in this incident with the four-wheeler where they're just clowning around on the thing. And another thing too, the autopsy report, he had 0.1 alcohol, a 0.1 alcohol level. So he was absolutely, without a doubt, slurring drunk. So, so they're horsing around on these four-wheelers. He has this rollover incident, but by all accounts, he's, just a typical 19-year-old. He's good to go. So no real injuries from that, maybe a scrape or two, but he's all dirty and comes back, showers, or actually, I guess, needs help. He's so drunk that some of the girls, help him clean up, and he gets on this white pair of shorts, and then wants to sleep. And I'm not clear from what I've read if it's that he wants to sleep, just go to sleep in the host girl's bed, or if he wants to sleep with her. So I'm not, I tend to think that he's wanting to sleep with her.
Yeah.
Because when she says no, then he's all of a sudden he has to leave to go cool off. So I can't imagine that, that if he just wants to crash in the bed, that's going to, and she says, no, why don't you go sleep on the floor or whatever. I can't imagine that is going to, create too much anger. But again, drunken teenagers, I guess anything's possible, but I tend to think that there was some kind of a romantic thing going there, and emotions got high, and he ends up with some girl somewhere that somebody at that party did not appreciate him being with. So I think at that point, emotions are high. I think someone ran over him there on the property somewhere. Either he's walking down that road. There are abrasions on his skin that that tend to make me think that it was road rash. You know, if you fall on the pavement, obviously you're going to get scraped. So he did have some abrasions, and there's some talk of some black material. Where the farmhouse was in relation to the highway where he was found, obviously it's perpendicular because the house is off the main highway. That looks to me in the photographs I've seen and on Google Street View, it looks to be like a gravel type road, a Kalachi road we call them. You know, so that clearly is going to give him a little bit of road rash, but if not a lot, maybe even more than the regular pavement. But they say that in the autopsy, there's a description of some black material. I have not seen the autopsy photographs. I'd love to actually be able to.
Yeah, no one has. The only people that have them is OHP. They haven't released those yet. But I'm gathering it could be just specks of asphalt. Yeah,
exactly. Which tends to make me think that might be from that gravel road where the farmhouse is. Although it doesn't look like it's dark colored gravel from the pictures I've seen, but that doesn't mean it couldn't be. And you know, I mean, who knows if maybe, you know, if this was done in anger or if it's done in clowning around, but nonetheless, he's struck by something heavy and moving, which would to me indicates a vehicle. You know, I think there's been some speculation that he was maybe dumped or fell off a moving vehicle. I just don't see that. I
don't see that either.
I don't see how that could not cause this level of injury.
I mean, I agree with you. I think it could have been the side by side he was run over with.
Do you think it's possible someone hit him in the back of the head and then ran him over with a ATV or something?
Possible.
Like hit him in the back of the head with something like a weapon or something.
Yes.
Out of anger, just like
that's on the top left of his head.
Because that's kind of what we thought. Like maybe someone was angry. Noah takes off. Someone's angry. They go after him. You know, when you're drunk, you don't realize like if you hit somebody, they could die. Like maybe they just maybe they hit him not accidentally, but they didn't realize they hit him hard enough to kill him. Like I don't really think it was planned.
Right. I don't think it was planned. Because I don't think anybody at this party. I don't think anyone there's no indication that anyone were enemies. You know, these were the popular kids. You know, at the party they were having fun. This thing was going on for 2 days. I just think with the combination of drunkenness and emotions, and some incident happened where it just sent emotions sky high. There's some type of a fight, maybe an altercation that leads to someone either getting on the side by side or, you know, in a car or a truck and doing this. And then it's an oh shit moment. And so then from there, you know, you got the girl that it's her family's you know, property. No one wants to get in trouble. I think people got together at that point and they moved this body. You know, again, little things that kind of add up that this was staged. Is, you know, he's nude. He's fully naked, except for a Hey Dude shoe and an Adidas shoe that was not his. That's pretty much explained. When he was, I guess, going to leave, he couldn't find one shoe, so he just took another one that he found. And he's wearing a white pair of loosely fitting.
Well, that's the question. We don't know if he was wearing a white pair of shorts
because there's no
Caden,
photos.
There was another
photos.
Caden, when he went down there at 5:25 after Jack came in to tell them that Noah was dead, Caden saw him wearing a black pair of shorts.
Yes. Yeah, and you see him in some videos. He's definitely wearing the black shorts.
Yeah. And then there was a pair of white shorts folded next to him, which we thought was weird too, because who would fold them? I mean, that's something a girl would do. I don't think a guy would fold them.
Or why would you disturb? A couple things about that. You know, why would you even touch anything in the crime scene? Because someone said they folded it. Number one. Exactly. Number two, if they say when they arrived, the truck driver who actually discovered him, and the time frame when 911 was called, it's almost 45 minutes.
Yeah.
What are you waiting for 45 minutes?
Yeah.
You know, that's it. Usually, you know, you see an accident, whether it's a fire or someone get a hit. That's the first call you make is 911.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So in
an account that I read, the shorts were found. Pardon me. The shorts were found by law enforcement a few feet away from the body, off into the ditch, I think. And at some point, someone from law enforcement actually folded the pants and put them near the body, which I find that egregious. Nothing should have been moved until it was photographed, and at that point, then it's going to be bagged. It's not going to be moved and placed by the body. There is no reason on earth that should have happened.
Especially since you're like pretty much less than an hour of daylight to come up. You know, It was dark when it happened.
Right.
When the people showed up, there was headlights. So you couldn't really see why move anything at that point. The road was blocked off, so you didn't have to worry about traffic.
Right.
So,
but the shorts, whether they were the white shorts or the black shorts, I wasn't aware that of the controversy about which ones they might have been. But nonetheless, shorts were found near him. And I think at least what was available for the autopsy, I think there was an indication that there was no damage to these shorts. Whereas we know that he did have some abrasions to his buttocks. So that means that his naked butt hit the ground somehow, because we know that there would be some indication of damage on the shorts. Okay. That said, I don't know if the thought in staging this was that, if he gets hit, it's going to knock him out of his shorts. Well, I promise you, it would have knocked him out of the Hey Dude shoe at the minimum.
Absolutely.
Okay. So someone put that shoe back on him. If this is a hit and run, that shoe would not be on his foot. There's no question about it. So the other thing too that bothers me is, he had damage to his teeth. I think there was a molar that was split in half, and there was a tooth. I don't know if it's the same one, but there was a tooth found just a few feet from where he was on the road. And then I think a piece of a chain that he wore. Mm-hmm. Again, if whatever hit him was going fast enough to cause the damage that it caused, that tooth is not going to be just laying just a couple of feet from him. It's going to go
flying,
zooming. Okay. So again, that's another thing that leads me to think this thing happened somewhere else. And I'm presuming that it happened somewhere near that house. And then this was staged to make it look like that, that Noah had left the party, because I think that there have been some accounts that this is not what was not uncommon for him. He'd get a little mad and then leave the party and come back, and then, so this is what the story is going to be, that, he just stormed off mad and unfortunately got to the highway, and then he was died of a hit and run. But man, it just doesn't fit. And again, Cindy, something you said, that, there's no debris. There's no, there's no indication that a car was damaged at all. And in saying that, I haven't seen anything that's at least publicly available as to whether the police examined and looked at every car, every vehicle that was at that party, and anybody that was there. I would hope that, that the police have compiled all of that information, what they were driving, and if all that's been examined, if that has happened, I haven't seen that publicly available.
I do believe that they, at this point, they do not believe it was a hit and run.
Yeah.
That's why they changed it to suspicious death.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, we speak to the OHP pretty often, and, he basically said, he goes, we're not ruling it as a hit and run. He goes, he told me, I know the guy who actually showed up there. I know him personally. And he said, yeah, when I showed up, they were telling me a hit and run. As soon as I rolled up on there and I saw it, I go, this doesn't look like a hit and run.
Right.
And so it's like, because that's the first thing. And then here's an OHP guy who basically deals with traffic accidents on a daily traffic deaths on a daily basis. Yes. And he said it was immediate that the first thing he saw, he goes, this looks strange.
Yes.
Well, I think going back to your theory, Stewart, I think that seems pretty in line with what a lot of people have been saying, is that emotions were running high. Maybe he was involved with someone at the party that upset someone else, and they followed him when he left. Yep. And somebody hit him. To me, it just feels like somebody hit him in the back of the head with a wound like that. It just didn't.
Yeah, because if he had fallen backwards, because it's in a weird place. It's right here.
It is.
So it's not. If it was back here, I would say it's something where he fell.
Right.
But it's like right here. And if you fall, it's in that one place where, if you fall backwards, it's not going to hit. It's going to be here.
Exactly. Again, yes, that doesn't fit. If I'm just standing up here in a car or bus or whatever just plows into me, obviously that's going to cause massive damage right here. But this probably is going to receive some kind of a fracture. When the whole skull is impacted. So we're going to see fractures that go back, but you're not going to see this avulsive wound that they describe in the autopsy. It's just
and it's so specific in size and shape.
Yes.
So, I mean, it could have been a rock, when he fell down. I mean, you could, but it's pretty well defined based upon the, the description and the way it's laid out. It definitely looks like someone hit him from behind.
This is a separate wound by itself, and that the wounds that are consistent with some type of an impact from something heavy and fast maybe have done. This sounds pretty cynical, but that could have been done to actually make it look like a hit and run, to cover up a fight where maybe a fight went too far, and this was a way to try to
or if it was just a friggin' accident and they didn't know what to do. I mean, it's like, that's the other
what
thing.
I was thinking. Like, if someone hit him, let's pretend someone was angry and they followed him out and they had a golf club or the butt of a rifle or something, and they just hit him in the back of the head and he goes down, and then they realize that he's not alive anymore.
Yep.
Then what? Then it's a panic, right? What do we do?
Mm-hmm.
Or, like Rob said, maybe it was a fight that went too far. It started with someone hitting him in the back of the head, and then they start beating him up, not realizing that he's already passed. Like, that's it. Then what do you do? So maybe there's like these, I mean, that's just my feeling, is that maybe in a panic, they just started doing all these things thinking this was the best thing to do to cover up what happened because they were scared.
Yes. Scared, panicking, not, thinking, oh my God, we're all going to jail. So, let's try to do this and make it look like it was an accident. And Noah ran away.
Exactly.
Yes. And I'm hearing too that maybe some of their stories are starting to diverge a little bit, and that, hopefully something's going to break on this, because the people at this party know what happened.
Absolutely.
And, I would hope, I know that the technology is getting better and better all the time as far as pinpointing where cell phones are and all that. Where his body's found in relation to the farmhouse is not that far, but I don't know if the technology, can pinpoint where some phones were exactly where his body was found. In other words, that would be someone that would have been placing him there. And if that technology is available, then that's going to be pretty hard to explain.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if they do a geofencing of Noah's phone, it would show like he was at the house, then he was over here, and he was over here if he had his phone with him. But I can't imagine that a 19-year-old kid, even in a drunken stupor, would leave the house without his phone.
Yes. I mean,
I don't believe that.
Yeah.
There's no way. And these kids it's attached to their body.
What's a little bit disturbing is that they were posting stuff all night. There's tons of social media photos, videos that kind of shows Noah, and they were writing markers on him, and and there was some jabbering between him and his friend.
Stuff you would expect at this type of party, and then it just kind of goes silent.
Yeah, and then in that one video, you see that one. I think Isaac is standing in the background. He's got a rifle. He's standing there. So it's just like There's a lot of things that don't really make sense to why he ended up that way leading up to it. So I'm getting back to the phones and the geofencing. And I was going to say was disturbing is that apparently a lot like the case that we in the county over, which we've covered and we're covering, that's been going on for 11 years. There was also a party before these people went missing. And then right afterwards, all of the kids' social media were scrubbed.
Yeah.
And this is what happened with this too. Yeah. As from what we've been told, that their social media accounts were, either shut down or
quieted
scrubbed,
or they're just not on there anymore.
Yeah. Yep. And
which is weird because
they were posting like at 3:41, someone posted that someone was missing, that Noah was missing.
Right.
So it's like,
And I
that
think
point.
too, I find it suspicious that the friend shows up at the crime scene. At the time, I guess the reason is he's on his way to go fishing with his dad, and he calls the dad. I don't know. I just find that a little funky. Yeah, something about him showing up there when he did just doesn't, to me, pass the smell test. I just find it highly suspicious. And it's one of those things that I can't really tell you why. It's just an instinct, but it just it's funky to me.
And you're talking about Jack.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, his timeline and his story has changed from because he did an early interview with News Nation, and then he just recently did an interview with People Magazine. And so there's some, and I can understand. I mean, if he was drunk too, it's late at night, he's tired, it's hard to remember things. But then you compare it with another friend of theirs, Caden, who was also at the party.
Yep.
And his timeline, and we talked to him numerous times, his timeline has not changed. And we have recordings of him talking to the police officers. We have him recordings twice, and his story hasn't changed. And he's talked to us twice. And, and he recently, his mother sent his phone out to kind of get analyzed to kind of verify if what he's saying is true. And it, according to what they're telling us and his attorney, it matches his statement of what's going on. So it's like, and so that's where you have to kind of really get into like into the needles here as far as the timeline, because he said 5:15 Jack burst through the door and woke everybody up and said Noah's dead, and then just went back out there. And then they went out there at 5:25, him and 3 or 4 other guys that they're friends with, and they were there for like 5 minutes and then were told to go away. But Jack wasn't told to go away.
Yeah, right.
And then he was there with his father, with the 2 truck drivers who were there, and then there was some volunteer fire department, which I believe one was a relative of the people that were throwing the party at the house. And then, then they waited 45 minutes to call the 911.
Yeah.
And those are the things we can kind of narrow down because we have data for them.
Yeah.
What were the conversations happening? When OHP showed up, he wasn't wearing any clothes.
Right.
So who took off his shorts?
Right. And why?
And why?
Yeah.
Well,
who's disturbing a crime
in
scene?
your experience, like, why would somebody do that?
Again, it to me it hints at that someone is trying to set this up, that that the thing just blew him out of his pants, on the hit and run. But that maybe the shorts would have, in an impact like that, could have, been, knocked off the body. But I promise you without a doubt that hey dude would have gone right with it. So
the shoes would have gone with it too.
And those shorts would have been dirty.
And they would have been dirty. They would have been, torn up. So yeah. I can find no logical reason about the shorts, other than that maybe, when this that's what leads me to think that maybe he didn't have any clothes on when this happened, when the original incident happened, which makes me think that maybe there was some adult business going on where someone just didn't.
Someone walked in on him with someone, and
exactly.
Well, Caden said he saw him with the black shorts on at 5:15 or 5:25.
Okay, and you guys pretty much, if I'm hearing you right, you find Caden credible in this.
Well, listen,
I do. Yes.
I find him credible. I mean, he went to great lengths to doing this. I mean, he didn't.
There's no benefit.
Jack was his best friend. He knew Jack before he did Noah.
Okay.
So it's like
why there's no reason for him to do it.
Yeah, he's not getting
in your
anything.
experience for a kid like this to come out and tell his story, what happened, he's going to be ridiculed by everyone. To me, there was just no reason for him to say anything.
I mean,
if it wasn't true,
he continued to volunteer, when he wanted to know why the cops didn't come talk to him right away. Yeah, because he's friends with them, and then he actually called them, and then it was like a week and a half, 2 weeks, and then he goes, "Do you want my phone?" He's offering all this information.
He's offering to cooperate. Yeah,
completely. He wants to find the answers, and then was told, "Well, we got the information you gave us. No problem. We don't need it." Like that, and then he literally months later, after the the medical examiner's report, he contacted him again, just literally like a month ago. And he says, don't you guys want to talk to me? Don't you want my phone information? And he was smart. He recorded all these conversations.
Good.
And we heard them. And so it was just like, they were just very casual about it. And it wasn't until he went down and spoken to them and told them something that they didn't know, that their tone changed. And so that's one of the things was really, so we feel like someone like that sounds credible.
Yes.
Well,
another thing too is there's some indications that people, that there have been some cleaning up going at the house. We
know that for a fact.
Bleach and so forth. How extensive was I don't think there was a search conducted at the time by law.
There wasn't. In fact, I verified that with the OHP officer. He says he searched the outside of the perimeter of the house just to see. He was looking for car parts.
Right.
That was it. So it wasn't like he was looking for anything other than car parts.
Right.
To kind of see, maybe this was a hit and run.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it doesn't really. Couldn't find any car parts.
And you're talking that he's searching up by the house, off the road, on the gravel road.
I believe so. I don't know how close he got to the house, but he said he searched the surrounding area, right where the house was, probably closer to the road, and that was it. Yeah. Nothing else. And then nothing else. And then it wasn't like they just left after that. The body was there till most of the day, which was, I guess a medical examiner, a coroner came out initially and then was called to another scene. And so they left, and, apparently they don't have that many coroners in the area. So they had to wait a while for another one to come out. So he was out there laying around in the hot sun, I think pretty much until dinner time. So that's a long time, even if yeah. So to me, it's like, and it wasn't like, be different if they were doing all the crime scene investigation stuff that makes sense.
Yes.
But we've talked to somebody, another retired law enforcement who did a lot of traffic deaths. And she goes, I don't think it would take that long for one body. Because if we had like multiple bodies, and it was like multiple vehicles, it could take all day.
Yeah.
But for something like this, where you just have a body on alongside of the road and there's no car parts, there's no accident, there's no visible signs of anything. She was surprised that it took that long.
Yeah. And, where I live in Texas, I'm probably about maybe 3 hours from where this happened. And I can tell you without a doubt, on September 4th in Texas, some places in the country, by the time you get to September, you're starting to get fall weather. I promise you, in early September, it is still very much summer. It is would have been spring hot.
Oh yeah. Let's talk a little bit about your experience with, because you've written a book about small town stuff, and I believe it was a novel about small. Did you write some stuff about that, about small town crime? Was that you?
Yeah. A novel being that it's fiction, but no, this was a true account of a. Of a public corruption case I worked. That I worked it with a Texas Ranger and an ATF agent, and a couple of times during this case, so many odd and interesting things happened that we would say to ourselves, someone should make a movie about this, or someone should write a book about this case. And one of the things that you do in the FBI when you finish a case, when you close a case, you write a closing memo. And that's actually an old term, memo. That kind of dates me a little bit, but I think technically now they call it an EC, electronic communication, but I still call it a memo, a closing memo. And you summarize the case and what happened, and just that in case if anything related to that ever crops up again and they have to reopen it or relook at it, right? When you go right to that case, there's a summary of what happened and what ended up in the case. So I was writing my closing memo, and it just struck me that this actually would be an interesting book to write. And so I just kind of wrote a long report describing this case. And that ended up being this book. It's called Tenahall, which is the name of the little town where it happened. And man, it had a little bit of everything. It had drug trafficking. It had illegal wiretapping. It had staged crime scenes. and involving just a small town law enforcement officer and the local drug dealer there. And I think it all culminated in a murder that, similarly to this case, to the Noah Presgrove case, had a staged crime scene. So again, it just had a little bit of everything in this case.
So saying that, do you think that Noah's crime scene was staged?
I do, yes.
And what what are your thoughts?
I'm just having to speculate, about how what maybe happened to him. But I'm almost certain that this is staged. Again, this small amount of blood, even though, like I said, he, just possible, he's got a big head wound and a lot of blood will go out of that. But depending on how the body lands, if he's dead and that heart's not pumping blood anymore, then only so much is going to come out of that head. But it would still be more than you see on the
absolutely
ground. So that's number one. Like I said, the tooth being so close to the body, that tooth would have been, yards away. The shorts, the undamaged shorts that are, there, the shoes still on him, this necklace chain thing that is laying nearby as well. That's also going to be just hurled yards away. So, it's just something's not right here.
Well, one of the things that we've discovered that people have told us locally is that the family who hosted the party, obviously they're I don't know if they're wealthy landowners, but they're landowners. They have influence in the county, and that they were on kind of like a do not hit list for law enforcement. Okay. Which is what we were told, meaning that, if they got stopped for
Is that
tickets,
something you've ever heard of in that area or something
or just
in
like small towns?
Sure. Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
So can you kind of elaborate a little bit from your perspective? What does that mean?
Well, I've never actually heard the term "do not hit," but what I take that to mean is that if you pull them over, basically they're not going to be arrested. They're not, they're going to
get a pass.
They're being let go. If they have to respond to any kind of calls up there, it's going to be, with the least amount of police enforcement, so to speak. And so, I always used to say that, because I did work corruption. That was the main thing I worked in the majority of my career in the FBI. That, we hear a lot of allegations about corruption. Luckily, most of the time I found that the allegations didn't turn out to be true. But that said, there absolutely is corruption. Especially in these small rural areas. The law enforcement in those areas, unfortunately, they don't make a lot of money. And so the temptation to maybe provide protection to those that can pay it, that need protection from law enforcement, is there. And perhaps maybe, the influence of a wealthy, influential citizen, is also a factor. So it absolutely happens. There's no question about it. And, and I'm not saying that it's true in this case. I don't know enough.
No, we don't know. We just know our experience because the county next to it, Love County, which we've spent a lot of time investigating for that other case for 2 missing people, young people, is that there was a lot of corruption, both going from the county sheriff side all the way up to the prosecutor. There were people who were on the Brady list. There was a lot of, the sheriff at the time that was the crime happened. He had been sheriff for 16 years. His son and him were cooking meth out of their house and harboring fugitives there. He was letting his son use his police vehicle to distribute methamphetamine to places. And, obviously he got taken. He was forced to resign, but he got a slap on the wrist for quite a few stacks of felonies that were being charged against him in a grand jury. But he walked away unscathed because he didn't want to go to trial. And they just said, well, if you step down. So, which is kind of how do it. But, we're hearing some of the same rumblings coming out of this county, and it's like right up against it. And it's hard for the family to start hearing this too, because they want answers. They want justice. Yeah. And when your brain starts getting infiltrated with, oh, well, maybe this is why this case isn't moving forward, because people are sitting on stuff. Now, we know for a fact, because I talked to the OHP a lot, they are actively investigating this. So, there's rumors that they're not investigating it. There was a report that came out that saying that the FBI might be like on an advisory when they're being able to, if they're requested by another agency to come in and help. We don't know if that's the case or
How
not.
does that work? Like,
from an for people who don't understand that, how does that work?
Yeah. So, many times the FBI might not have specific jurisdiction in a case like this, but they certainly can offer assistance with technical services, scientific and forensic help that maybe sometimes a smaller county or city just doesn't have the access to, and in many times even maybe the state labs and those kind of things. The FBI sometimes has specific resources that the state and locals just don't have. So they certainly can provide help, when requested on it. And so I wouldn't find that unusual that maybe, especially if they are legitimately trying to solve this thing and then maybe they've hit a roadblock, that they'll seek out and see do the feds maybe have something that can help us? I don't, that would be perfectly reasonable, and I would think it would happen.
And how about, because in my experience, I know a lot of retired FBI and current FBI, they don't like to be in the limelight. So they could be looking into this and just saying they're not. They may be helping and they may not. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, that's entirely consistent. Absolutely. Because, since I've retired, I think some of my viewpoints have maybe changed a little bit, and I'm much more of a advocate for transparency. And in fact, one of the things that really bugs me about some things being transparent and some things not being transparent is that any case that I ever worked, you could go and submit a FOIA or Freedom of Information request and get everything in there, except maybe, as I think we talked on another podcast, except maybe some personal identifiers of folks, which is perfectly reasonable that that's not publicly available. But the substance of the case and everything that was done, is in there, and it's for full scrutiny out there. So when I see things that are classified and this or that is not going to be released, that really bugs me, because I didn't have anything to hide. Now when you're working the case, it is better that you don't have that people in some cases don't know that this case is ongoing, because when you talk to somebody, you don't want that to necessarily be in the newspaper the next day, because sometimes people, they're not going to confide in you. They're not going to tell you things if they think, this is going to be splashed in the media the next day. So, it's a weird thing that in an ongoing investigation, there is a certain need that to keep things,
sure,
out of the public eye.
Yeah.
But, I'm, like I said, I'm much more, I lean now way more toward, hey, just put it out there and let people decide it for themselves.
Yeah. As far as the people that could possibly be involved that know information that could help close this case, what is that like from a law enforcement perspective? What advice do you have for them? Because it's like if they're harboring information that could lead to the conclusion of this case, and now we're looking at almost 11 months since it's happened, and now they come out. What is the ramifications, because it's and if they were involved in it in some way, from what we've been told by law enforcement, it's like first person that comes out is usually the one who gets the deal. Yeah.
Well, and that's true. We used to call that, the train's leaving the station. If you want to be on that train, you need to cooperate now. A couple of things. So what could happen is somebody could, and I would presume, I don't know the criminal histories, if any, of any of these kids involved. But assuming that they are just normal, everyday American teenagers, they probably have a conscience. And, I haven't seen anything that indicates that Noah was not liked. that, I mean, these are all his friends. So someone probably this is bearing heavily on their conscience, but, self-interest sometimes has to battle with conscience about doing the right thing. But, it could break open by someone just having a crisis of conscience and coming forward and just and doing the right thing. The other thing that could happen, and I know this from working corruption cases, is if I'm a corrupt cop and Rob, let's say you're a criminal and we have a relationship, and I'm protecting you from doing whatever your bad deeds are. We may not like each other, we may not hang out together, but we have a mutual interest to protect each other. But that said, you get caught in some other circumstance by some other law enforcement somewhere, you've got an ace up your sleeve that you can play and, turn me in. And that could be another possibility here that somebody, that somebody could get in trouble somewhere else, on some minor deal or something, and cooperate and say, you know what, this whole Noah Presgrove thing stinks, and here's what happened. I was there. So something like that could happen, that someone says that to keep themselves out of trouble on something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can only hope. I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's been almost a year.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's taking so long?
Well, it's one of those things where you think that if this, after a year later, if this thing was some kind of, put together stage deal with a bunch of drunken teenagers, you would think that someone would have either had that crisis of conscience by now and absolutely just spill their guts about what happened, or, someone there would have been, maybe not to the extent that I described as far as getting arrested and get yourself out of charges. Maybe it's just that, hey, I had a fight with him and, emotions got high, and I'm going to tell what happened. I'm surprised something like that hasn't happened, if it is what we're speculating that it is, that, something went wrong and emotions got high there, and then they staged this thing. So I am surprised, honestly, that there isn't more forward movement or some kind of, development from one of the participants yet. Yeah.
I mean, because, crimes and secrets are hard to keep. Ben Franklin said it best. The only way three people can keep a lie is if two of them are dead.
It's true. Yep.
I mean, and you have more than three people you're dealing with here. You had a party full of people. Granted, there made that circle of who could possibly be involved in this is probably smaller. But at the same point, I mean, from your perspective as a law enforcement, I mean, you don't think this was just an accident?
I don't. I think it was staged. Again, I just have to speculate based on what we know the injuries to the body are and the circumstances, the somewhat sketchy circumstances, although there's quite a bit of information about the party and what was going on. But between those two things, I'm speculating what happened, but I'm almost certain this thing was staged and that he did not die where his body was found.
When you were dealing with the corruption cases, and obviously you're investigating other possible law enforcement who are doing something wrong, correct?
Yes.
All right. So when you're doing that, when you have an FBI agency, a federal agency looking into a department, I mean, because there's not everybody's bad. There's a lot of good people. It's probably usually probably the one person is, we always say it only takes one person out of 100 that can screw up everything.
Yep.
And that can really throw a monkey wrench in anything.
Yep.
So how do you navigate that to try to get information, especially if that person is in a position of power and all these people have to work underneath that person? How do you attack that?
Well, again, that's something where, again, it's way more to your benefit that nobody knows that you're even looking into this, especially, the law enforcement folks. So there's a lot of so that involves surveillance. It involves getting financial records to see if there's unexplained income, that kind of thing. And a lot of times what you're kind of banking on is that the bad guy involved in this, because in the cases that I worked, again, it was a protection type relationship. And so the person that's getting protected, generally a drug dealer, is if you just go to them and interview them, they're gonna play dumb, and 2 seconds when you're out the door, they're gonna obviously the whole little criminal network is gonna know what's going on. But what you generally hope for is, like I said, is a situation where that bad guy it gets wrapped up on something else.
Mm-hmm.
So that's usually the focus of the investigation is, can we run someone against an informant? Can we run someone against that bad guy and maybe get him involved in some type of criminal violation that now we have leverage over, and now he can cooperate to try to help himself against the dirty cop.
It's crazy. Yeah. So just so many, I mean, for such a small town, for what appears to be, a simple crime with just, it's not like some sort of big diabolical thing. And we know we know where he was beforehand, and then they found him very close to the house. I mean, they say it was like a mile away. Based upon what I looked at, it looks like it was a little closer than that.
Yeah.
And that if there was any kind of noise or anything, if they say they hit him in the back of the head, he went down, didn't realize he was dead, and they're like, all right, then they're going to run him over with maybe an ATV or a truck. Yeah. I think, to me, based upon what we've seen as far as the injuries, it wasn't a big vehicle, because it would have just, I mean, we had a friend of ours who walking across the street in DC and got hit by a cab, and he was thrown 50 feet.
Yeah.
50 feet in the air. And he walked away from it. I mean, he was in the hospital, but he walked away from it, and he had less injuries than what Noah had.
Yeah.
He broke his arm, but literally.
Yeah. I mean, he was fine.
He would have been.
And he literally went 50 feet in the air.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We know it's not a hit and run. I mean, we know that.
Yeah.
And even OHP has said that. So
yeah.
It is suspicious. Someone knows what happened.
Yes. So hopefully, maybe again, but with a year behind us, I would have thought that the geofencing data would have absolutely told the story. But if it has,
it may have. I think they're just, one of the things that we all know with these cases, and as well as you do, you only get one shot.
Yes.
So you want to make sure that shot is a laser and not a shotgun, because shotguns sometimes will dilute the evidence. So you want to make sure, so I'm sure that's what it's going by, because we've had this, the other case we're working in Oklahoma too, and and we filter our information. The BIA's involved in it, and any tips we get, we just send them straight to them, and we don't hear back from them. We don't expect to hear back from them.
Right.
So it's just like, here's just trying to help the case. But they've said that publicly, that they only have one shot at it, and they said we got to make sure we do it and we get it right.
Right. Yeah. And again, I respect that, and I understand that you want to make sure you get it right, and if there's something, many times the evidence that you have points toward what you think happened, but it's maybe not to that level that you can prove it in court, and maybe that's what it is they just don't quite have enough, and that's what they're looking for. They're looking for that next piece of evidence that absolutely confirms what they've already got.
Because I mean, from your perspective, do you think that he was moved and placed there and it was staged at the scene?
Yes.
Yeah, because the other person that looked at it used to be a coroner. She said the lividity with the way the blood pooled basically said that the crime didn't happen then.
Yeah.
At where that is.
Yeah.
It happened before then, the amount of time.
If he was hit by like an ATV or something, would he have had tire tracks or anything on him? Or
depends on. I don't know. I mean,
I don't know. If he's, my initial thought is yes, but I don't know. Again, most of my experience has been in gunshot type, deaths and so forth, and so I haven't had a great deal of. I haven't had any experience in in hit and run type injuries. You guys with your friend having more than I did on that, but
I mean, the thing that was really that she pointed out is that there was the extremities were basically pretty clean.
Yeah, And overall, the injuries, the really severe stuff is more on the upper body. The lower body was relatively unharmed.
Yeah.
So there's just so many funky things to this but I absolutely think minimum that he did not die there. So therefore that it's staged.
If you were a private investigator investigating this case, where would you start?
Well, I'd start if I could get all those phones. That's number one. And I'd want to know all the vehicles, if they're, and as well as the ATV. I want to look at all of those. Was there any damage? Were they, did they go to any repair shops? That kind of thing.
Well, we do know that Jack's truck was sold shortly after that.
Okay. So, do we, probably not well, maybe there would be photos if he sold it. Obviously, probably, I don't know if he.
Well, I mean, that doesn't mean anything. People sell their trucks all the time. But,
yeah,
I mean, yeah, they should have had some kind of record of what all those vehicles look like in pictures, exactly, just to kind of clarify that, okay, this vehicle was not involved in anything, just so that they have it. Do they have that? We don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, because that, when I very first looked at this case a few months ago, that was one of the first things I thought of. Cars and phones, would be a logical place to look where your evidence is, is going to point you to that.
Well, sure. I mean, and there's talk about how people were resetting their phones the next day.
Yep.
Even when you reset your phone, the stuff still lives on the cloud. It's still there. So it might take a minute to get that information off. But I mean, I just feel like they must have something.
Yes. Do we know if there have been any polygraphs done?
There was one polygraph. Apparently, Jack Newton said he took it. I spoke to OHP. They, according to what he told me, he said it didn't appear that the polygrapher, he couldn't tell me exactly what, because the polygrapher would be the one that have to state
Sure.
it, saying that he didn't appear that he was being deceptive. But
Okay.
it didn't, but we've heard other stories where, he could have possibly altered his, the way he took it, people are saying maybe he took a Xanax or smoked some weed beforehand, because that can all affect it. So
right.
that can throw things off there. So we don't know. That's all we know, that it appears that he wasn't deceptive. He was saying he flat out passed it. He called the Noah's family, said he passed it, but that's not what OHP said.
Well, maybe from his perspective, by saying,
because they usually don't even tell you, do they?
I'm actually kind of sitting here stunned that they told you. So
no, I mean, like, they don't even tell the person they're polygraphing, and they usually don't tell them.
Well, so generally the way it works is, when they, they'll spend probably 30 minutes to an hour or more before they even hook them up to the machine, because really the point of the polygraph is to get someone to confess. Rather than just rely on you failed. So, there's a pretty extensive interview before they're hooked up. They tell them what they're going to say. All this is meant to kind of maybe,
build up.
Yeah, build up. Exactly. They hook them up. There's a baseline of the physiological reactions. And then, based on, how well they did, the examiner usually will leave them hooked up to the machine, come out of the room, let a little more tension build up, and go back in and then, resume it from there. And, some people will say, all right, you got me. But most of the time, they'll just still deny, even when told, you failed the polygraph. They will just say, well, the machine must be wrong because I'm telling the truth. Yeah.
And if they're savvy enough, they know that in a lot of states, they can't be admissible anyway. So
exactly. Yeah. So they just,
even though more states are using it, there's still a lot of them that are, they can't even use it.
It's
so
no matter at that point, then how long will they stay there and keep denying it? And I've seen it happen for about 4 hours where, and really at that point, there's just, it gets ridiculous. It's silly. So, they can it's over.
Fantastic. Well, listen, thank you so much for taking your time out of your vacation to talk to us.
Absolutely.
And we really appreciate it. We'll definitely keep you in the loop. And if we hear anything, love to bounce some more things off you as we learn it.
Love
And,
it. Yeah. Because again, I think maybe I mentioned this to you guys before. For me, I was really young when I went into the FBI. I just thought it was something that was going to be cool. But it ended up, I liked it. And what I liked about it was not so much that, I'm the good guy going out, getting the bad guy for truth and justice. I mean, that was obviously that's part of it. But what really drove me some more was just solving the puzzles. That these cases are all puzzles, and I'm a puzzle solver. And so I love doing it. So again, it's not work for me. This is all interesting stuff to me. And it will always be something that I will do, regardless of whether I'm retired or not.
Well, Noah's case is a big puzzle, so hopefully we can try to find the pieces to put it together
and bring some
justice and resolution to it,
to the family.
Thank you, Stewart.
Thanks, buddy.
Guys.
I will see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.